And then from there, they are propelled into what structure? They're leaving the testes.
Reed's testes?
Not quite.
Straight-
before that.
straight
Straight
straight.
tubule. Okay. The straight tubule or the tubuli recti. And then we would have the reedy testes. Now we're out of the testes, efferent-ductal. Connecting the testes to the epididymis. And in the epididymis we have head, body, and tail. Okay? Emission, if you recall, was the sperm leaving the tail of the epididymis and passing through the, what's the long tube that goes through the canal? Okay, the vas deferens or ductus deferens. And the last dilated region of the ductus deferens, ampulla. And then it joins secretions from the seminal vesicle and enters the urethra. So that is emission, going from the tail of the epididymis into the urethra. Right? And that was kind of where we stopped on Tuesday. So we'll finish up with that today. So we'll put ejaculatory duct. And then from there, it passes through the three components of the urethra. Prostatic urethra, membranous, and we haven't covered this yet, so these words sound new. So passage through the urethra is another E word. We call that ejaculation. Okay? So movement of the sperm and glandular fluid from the tail to the vas ejaculatory duct is emission, and then movement through the urethra is ejaculation. So the neural control of that, and which muscles contract and what's the sensory reflex pathway, we will cover tomorrow in the lecture hall. We talked about two glands contributing secretions to the sperm on Tuesday. We have the seminal vesicle. What were some of the contents of that glandular fluid that comes from the seminal vesicle and the seminal gland? Okay, fructose or citric acid used for what? Okay, that's how the mitochondria made ATP without having to go through the glycolysis components and use that directly. Prostaglandins. The prostaglandins are named for the prostate, but they actually come from the seminal vesicle. And then a couple of other things that also the prostate gland will secrete as well. Anybody remember? Okay, fibrinogen is one of the clotting agents. And then fibrinolysin breaks down the clot. Okay? So that's coming from the seminal vesicle. The prostate gland releases those same clotting agents, bicarbonate ions that both will release, and then some antibiotics to help protect the sperm as it passes external to the body. And there's one gland that we didn't talk about, and that's the bulbourethral gland, also known as Cowper's gland. Okay, so either term you can use. In the female, there's a similar gland. Bulbourethral can be used for both male and female. It secretes as part of emission, but it goes below the prostate into the urethra And it's going to also flush out. It's going to be secreted before ejaculation, and it's going to flush out as well any residual urine and help to lubricate the surface of the penis. So now we're going to talk about the rest of these structures that form the penis itself. And this has always been kind of a weird view because it doesn't help to understand the structure of the penis. And I believe it's on Tuesday that we're going to be using the modeling clay. So we will have talked about female erectile tissue by then. So be sure you have your modeling clay by then. Play-Doh's fine. It just makes the penis a little droopy. So either one is fine. So what's the structure of the penis? We have 3 bodies of erectile tissue. I'm going to draw a diagram. I'm going to take you through some images from Netters to explain this image a little bit better. And in the first image, we're looking at a male lying on his back with his legs up and knee supports. This structure right here is the ischial tuberosity. So this is a female pelvis, but you're looking at it in this view. So the ischium, remember ilium, ischium, and pubic bones are the components of the os cocci. So this structure right here is the ischial tuberosity. And then this portion right here is ischial ramus and inferior pubic rami. So we're going to have our erectile tissue, part of our erectile tissue attached to that. Right? In the female, you would have the vestibule here, and we'll see this on Tuesday, with the opening of the urethra and vagina, and then the opening of the anus. So this triangle that's drawn here is known as a urogenital triangle for urinary and reproductive components. Now if we take the skin off, again, here's the ischial tuberosity, all right, and here is, I don't know if you guys that didn't have me last semester learned the levator ani. It's a muscle, actually it's a series of 3 muscles that forms the floor of the pelvis and contributes to the external anal sphincter. And so it would fit, what's it called again? Levator ani. So if you, as a female, if you've been instructed to practice the Kegel exercises to help support pelvic organs, that's the muscle that one of the muscles that you're contracting. I'm trying to get a pin in this plastic hole here. Anyway, so it fits like this. Okay, so it forms this pelvic sling. And then the muscles that we're seeing, so that's that one. And then the muscles that we're seeing here, remember this is a female, so they're going to be a slightly different relation. They have to separate to go around the vagina. So then this fills in this space right here. So the mylohyoid forms the floor of the mouth and kind of fills in the triangle created by the mandible. So this muscle right here is covered by this fascia, and I'll draw it on the board to make it a little bit clearer. So it's kind of that image there, is the external urethral sphincter. And then these are muscles that are covering the erectile tissue. So it's been partly removed, and you can see some of the erectile tissue in the female here. Again, we'll be doing that on Tuesday because this is the female model. So now on the board, can I erase the sequences here? I didn't do that in the earlier lecture, and it kind of compressed my boardroom. Tuberosity. have our obturator foramen over here. Opening for the urethra. So this muscle is the external urethral sphincter, or urogenital diaphragm. Like everything else, your favorite phrase in anatomy is also known as, so urogenital diaphragm, external urethral sphincter, or deep transverse perineal or perineal muscle. So that's covered up by this fascia right here, and on the model is seen right in here. Okay, kind of filling in that triangle of all of this space here. So inferior to that now, we're going to find the erectile tissue structures. We can use that basis as a floor. So if we remove the skeletal muscle over that, we see this layer of fascia, and then we see the erectile tissue. Erectile tissue, as we'll talk about tomorrow in our reflex pathways, is found as a series of venous channels and arteries. Here's a cross section of the penis, and the blood supply, the arterial blood supply into the penis under sexual stimulation during erection, that's our third E word, all right, causes an increase in blood flow as the smooth muscles of the arteries dilate, relax, and additional blood flows into the penis, and that collapses the thin-walled veins, which is how the blood would be leaving the penis. So if those veins are collapsed, they're not going to allow the blood to flow into them and out of the penis, and we have the turgidity or the erection as the penis increases in length and in diameter. Females, as we'll talk about next week, the same thing happens. It's just the clitoris is much shorter, and erectile tissue not as large in diameter. Okay. So there are two sets of components to this erectile tissue. The dorsal structure, the components of the penis, let me go back to this other diagram, are identified as dorsal components and ventral components. Now, in anatomical terminology, those are usually interchangeable, because if I was a four-legged animal, the dorsal surface would be what I have now as a posterior surface, and my ventral belly would be my anterior surface. In nerve tissue, we sometimes use it more for horizontal structures. And so that's named for the penis, instead of being droopy, as if it was erect. And so what would be the anterior corpus cavernosus structures are identified as dorsal, and the inferior ventral structure is identified in that aspect here. So where those erectile structures are attached to bone on either side on our rami, they are identified as the legs, or crus. Okay. So the lower extremity, the leg, is another name for that in the anatomical terminology section way back when, is crus. All right, calf is plural, but leg itself is crus. And then above the bone, where it's no longer attached to the bone, is called the body. So we have the legs supporting the body. And our Latin word for body is corpus, or corpora for plural. So I'm going to draw another view of this over here on the side. I'm going to be covering some of the symphysis pubis up. Let me read. So the crus of the penis is what is attached to the ischial tuberosity.
Can you spell that? C-R-U-S?
C-U-R-C-R-U-S.
Yes.
Okay.
corpora is plural. So this would be crus. Sounds like it means cross, but it's really leg. Crus of the penis, plural, two of them would be corpora. So those would be these two structures here, which we don't see on our sagittal model because they're outside the plane of section. Sagittal models are cut through the center here. We see these, but not these more lateral aspects. And then the two corpora, this is what we're going to model next week, become free of the bone. Wrong color. And are called the corpora cavernosa.
Oops.
Or corpus cavernosum being singular. So one is a corpus cavernosum. Down here it would be crus. Up here, corpus. Now, neither of these structures contain the urethra. Right? So in the sagittal section, we're looking at these two structures here. So these are the two corpora cavernosum when we're actually in the shaft of the penis. Then if we add the ventral component, that's the bulb of the penis. This is where the urethra first enters the rectal tissue. And then it has a shaft that extends onto the ventral surface of the penis, and that is the corpus spongiosum, which is why we also call the penile urethra the spongy urethra, because it's found within the corpus spongiosum. There's only one of them. So here would be the bulb, and all of this along here is corpus spongiosum. At its tip, it expands, forms a mushroom-like cap that covers the corpora cavernosa. And this cap is known as the glans penis. That would be this structure right here. That is what is visible if the prepuce or the foreskin is pulled back, all right, or is exposed if you had a male circumcision and the foreskin is cut. If we go back to this image here, we're seeing the crus, the two corpora cavernosa, the bulb, and the corpus spongiosum expanding to form the glans penis. Okay? I want penis on the end of it, not just glans, because in the female we have the glans clitoris. I want you paying attention to whether we're looking at male or female. You would think I would be able to assume that you know that, but I've had this tagged on lab exams. This is a female pelvis. There's the uterus, and I've had students tell me those are testicles. So I can't always make those assumptions. On the cadaver exams, when I was teaching the med school at Sac State, I've had students identify